Hello there, you're with NDTV. I'm Maha Siddiqui. India has ripped the veil of a US sustenance package to Pakistan for the upkeep of F-16 fighter jets. India's External Affairs Minister said, "You're not fooling anybody," after stating exactly where and how Pakistan has been deploying its jets. While America's military aid to Pakistan is ostensibly for counter-terrorism purposes over the last 20 years to manage the Taliban in Afghanistan, but Pakistan's support to Taliban and Haqqani network have been totally exposed. More so last year as US withdrew its troops. Are India's concerns valid, and how is Jaishankar's calling out the US-Pakistan tango on F-16 likely to play out? That's our discussion this evening on NDTV. The strongest ever language used by India opposing the decision of the United States to clear a $450 million package to sustain Pakistan's F-16 fighters, a move that the government of India has strongly opposed, most recently by External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar, who's in the US on an official visit.
When you are talking of an aircraft capability of the US, everybody knows, where they are deployed and what is the use and what. So, you're not fooling anybody by saying.
The sharp comment from S Jaishankar is the third such remark on the issue over the last month by senior Indian officials and ministers. Perhaps seeking to reach out to India after the F-16 issue, the United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken has now asked Pakistan's Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari to manage the relationship with India reasonably.
In our discussions today, we talked about the importance of managing a responsible relationship with India.
Despite the US assertion that Pakistani F-16s are meant for anti-terrorism duties, New Delhi knows all too well that these fighters were used by the Pakistani Air Force in 2019 against India in the air battle a day after the Balakot strikes. An F-16 is believed to have been brought down by the fighter flown by Wing Commander Abhinandan Vardhaman. Bureau Report, NDTV. Let's head straight into our discussion now. Sharat Sabharwal, former Indian envoy to Pakistan, former diplomat, joining us here on the show. Seema Sirohi, columnist for the Economic Times and the Observer Research Foundation, joining us from the US. KC Singh, former diplomat and former Indian ambassador to the US and strategic affairs expert. And Air Marshal P.S. Ahluwalia, former air officer commanding in chief Western Air Command. Sharat Sabharwal, I want to first come to you. Is External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar's assessment that US-Pakistan relationship has not served either country correct? And if so, how is it that Pakistan is able to continue to be able to extract aid from the US?
Well, they have, as you can remember, they have gone into different transactional relationships over the history of relationship between the two countries. Let me recall for the last 30 years or so, the Afghan Jihad, where Pakistan was the lead country for an effort mounted by the Americans, other Western countries. And that unleashed forces in this region from which the region is suffering till today. Then came the US war against terror, where Pakistan overnight turned from a country supporting the Taliban and terrorists into a country in the forefront of the war against terror, but following a dual policy of, backing the American effort, but at the same time protecting the Taliban. And that, as you have seen, has led to the situation today where the Taliban are ensconced well in Afghanistan. So this is a relationship. It's difficult to imagine how it has served American interests. Because even as Pakistan was saying that it was supporting the American war against terror or their efforts in Afghanistan, Taliban operating from the Pakistani territory, and this was during the period I was High Commissioner there, were killing American, British and other NATO forces there. For Pakistan, what it has meant is it has encouraged Pakistan, because of the assistance that they have been getting. They never developed the habit of managing their economy responsibly. They have lived all through beyond their means, and they continue to do so. As you have seen, they break down every now and then, the economy breaks down. So this has not helped Pakistan that way. It has also encouraged Pakistan to sustain its adversarial posture against India, a much bigger and better endowed neighbor, which imposes very heavy and unsustainable burdens on their economy. And it has also encouraged them to, support terrorism, etc., encourage religious extremists and so on. So it's a relationship which has neither served the interests of the Americans, nor of the region, and nor of Pakistan. It has always encouraged Pakistan to move in the wrong direction.
All right. Seema Sirohi, but S Jaishankar's comments came at a time when he met Secretary Blinken in Virginia yesterday. He'll be meeting him again today for a bilateral meeting, then a press conference. He also met Lloyd Austin. What can we expect now after today's meeting? We've heard Secretary Blinken tell Bilawal Bhutto Zardari that India-Pakistan relationship should be managed reasonably, but is that somewhat of a balancing act?
Look, one thing that's going on is a sort of a reset between the US and Pakistan because they need Pakistani airspace for whatever operations they might conduct in Afghanistan. But what the foreign minister said here about the F-16s is not exceptional. I mean, nobody believes that F-16s are used for counterterrorism purposes. So the sustainment program of $450 million is to improve the capabilities of the F-16s. So they'll fly longer and better and against India. So, at the same time, it raises the specter of a two-front war for India. So what Mr. Jaishankar said was basically the facts. And it defies common sense to, take the official explanation of the US at face value. They haven't been used for counterterrorism purposes. And they expect India to sort of go along with this explanation. That's what Jaishankar was doing. He was just speaking the truth. And the point is, the relationship with India is strong enough right now, has been growing over the years, that I think it's okay for India to speak its mind.
But the point remains, and Ambassador K.C. Singh, I want to come to you on that count. If America is aware of these ramifications and the fact that a close partner like India is getting antagonized as well in the process, why has the Biden administration chosen to reverse the decisions of the Trump administration in the kind of support that it is providing militarily to Pakistan in the form of aid?
Look, I take in two parts. There is a strategic element and there's the element of India-Pakistan. The strategic element is India has been saying we are for multipolarity. So when we are dealing with Russia, we don't at that point take into consideration US feelings. Even to the extent of the Ukraine war, President Biden saying that the Indian position is very shaky. So when we are buying discounted oil, say worth about $1 billion to $1.5 billion, $1.5 billion a year, that money is going into the Russian coffers, which is sustaining the war, and Putin is able to then threaten Europe and threaten the Americans, even with nuclear weapons. Now, how would the Americans be treating that? I don't think we have taken that into account. Mr. Jaishankar, it's fine for Mr. Jaishankar to get very excited about the weapons, but they could turn around and say that, hey, we've been pressing you in Russia and you have ignored it. You say it's multipolarity. If it's multipolarity, then even the Americans will also go and deal with other countries you may not be that happy with. And of course, there are the local factors. One is spelled out very clearly. They need access to Afghanistan. They moved out of Afghanistan, but they want to be able to influence or control any militancy that may be going out of that place, because they know global jihad that spreads from there will come and hit them again. And second is, of course, within Pakistan itself, Imran Khan has taken a pro-Russia, pro-China and anti-US position. So they want to strengthen the military, strengthen the government in Pakistan. IMF package has been given so that you don't get somebody like Imran Khan there and the Americans don't want it. And finally, they don't want to push Pakistan deeper into the Chinese corner. They're deep enough. So there are multiple factors. So either we shouldn't talk of multipolarity. If we are talking of multipolarity and we are not a US ally, then in that case, there's no need to get upset. This should have been expected. There's no need to make a public spat out of it, as the Americans haven't made out of your buying discounted Russian oil.
All right. But Air Marshal Ahluwalia, how serious is this sustenance package an issue for India, especially after what we saw in 2019 after the Balakot strikes?
This is undoubtedly going to give a fair amount of combat potential to the Pakistan Air Force and the military in general. When they talk about sustainability, they are talking about providing all the spare parts that will keep the force in being, will keep the aircraft serviceable. But what is of more interest is the upgradation. The upgradation will give them more life for their airframe. It will give them better avionics, which means better radar, which means better combat capability again. It will subsequently involve giving them better weapon systems. So the upgradation package is going to be definitely more important to India, because we'll have to face another at least 60 aircraft. That means another 4 squadrons of upgraded F-16, which is a great combat potential. Add to that the J-17s that are being manufactured with collaboration with the Chinese. So all in all, their combat potential is going to multiply many times over. So operationally, it is certainly going to help Pakistan. And more important, I think, which has already been discussed, as to what is the fate of the US-American relations. The US-American relations are not built on this. This has been going on for the last 30, 40 years, when the F-16s first came into the subcontinent. So I think we have to accept what KC Singh just mentioned, that these are normal things that will go on between countries, and each country has its own interests, like we keep repeating on and off, and therefore the US will have its own interests. And keeping their own interest in mind, I think we need to just calm down on this and let diplomacy take its own way.
All right. But Seema Sirohi, can I come back to you on the point of the timing? Is the timing here important? Considering Ambassador Singh also pointed out that India has been buying discounted oil from Russia. Of course, the West was initially showing that it was upset over it. Do you think the timing needs to be brought into factor here as well?
Look, I think he was asked a question about, a very specific question about the F-16, so he answered it. And last time when Mr. Jaishankar came to Washington, there were a lot of questions from the media and from the think tankers about India buying Russian oil and India taking a neutral position on the Ukraine war. So he was put on the back foot, and this time I think he's decided to be on the front foot. One point I'd like to make is that the US upgrading the F-16 fleet of Pakistan, I mean, it cannot be compared to India buying Russian oil. These weapons are used mainly against India, right? So if India is friends with Russia or buying defense equipment from Russia, it's not using it against the US. But US is directly supplying Pakistan, so it's a little bit different and qualitatively.
Okay. All right. Sharad Sabharwal, how do you then assess what Blinken told Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, saying that the India-Pakistan relationship should be reasonably managed? Do you think this was in response to the kind of reactions coming in from India with regards to F-16? Because S Jaishankar is not the first one to have raised it. Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, has raised it, and in a 2+2 intersessional meeting as well in Delhi, this issue was raised.
Well, that they put it out that, the Secretary of State told Bilawal Bhutto that relationships should be managed responsibly, maybe because of the reactions coming from India. But the larger issue is that it's very well to say you manage your relationship reasonably. At the same time, the Americans, for various reasons, which have been explained by the panelists before me, because of their own interests, for various reasons, they have been doing things which encourage Pakistan to sustain that sort of posture and adversarial posture towards India. So on the one hand, you say manage it responsibly. On the other hand, you do that. The situation now is that Pakistan has painted itself into a tight corner, especially after India's Article 370 move. What did they do? They suspended trade with India, which hurts their economy more than the Indian economy. They are unable to open trade because of the highly polarized political atmosphere in Pakistan. So the Shahbaz government is not in a position to take any constructive step. But more importantly, they have been saying that you withdraw this move. Now, what does Pakistan have to do with Article 370? They are questioning the accession of Jammu and Kashmir with India. Started before Article 370 was introduced into the Indian Constitution, and it outlasted abrogation of that article by the government of India. So at the moment, it's all very well to say you manage affairs responsibly, etc., etc. But I am afraid the Pakistanis are not in a position to do so. They can constructive step. They have toned down terrorism. They have been on the back foot for the last few years, but that's for different reasons. Because they are internally busy, because of their economic situation, because of FATF scrutiny.
All right.
Some they decline now.
All right. We seem to be having a bit of an audio problem there, sir. Let me go across to Air Marshal Ahluwalia. Sir, the fact is that India provided evidence to the fact that F-16s were used in 2019 on the 27th of February, but there wasn't really any response from the American side about its usage against India. How do you read that?
Let's put it in the correct perspective that we had the Mirages which had attacked Balakot, and we were expecting a reaction, and it is normal that they would react, because they had to save face. So they did do some sort of a strike into partial Indian territory, very little inside the territory, maybe 5 or 6 or 10 kilometers. So they were using the F-16s, and we expected them to use it. We were ready for them, and that's what happened, that one of them got shot up. So I don't think that is an issue that should be debated, because if we go into somebody else's territory, they are going to react to that. So that was perfectly all right. What we should be concerned about is how is China going to react in giving more and more combat potential to China. And if America does even a wee bit of it, then we've got these two adversaries on both sides, on the north and the west. And that is what is going to make it very tricky for India to be able to manage this. And as far as the United States is concerned, very importantly, they are once again repeating what they did over the ages from the 70s onwards, trying to put India and Pakistan on the same pedestal.
Okay.
So therefore, we have to push them to get out of this and do not please equate India with Pakistan.
All right. Ambassador Singh, last question to you, sir. What do you see? How do you see, rather, America responding to this? In a short while from now, there'll be a meeting between S Jaishankar and Secretary Blinken. Do you think that this entire pressure that India has created is likely to be addressed there?
I don't know. We'll find out if they are looking for a quid pro quo. I still believe that the Russian oil thing is a very big thing with them, because the whole of Europe is suffering. It may not be a weapon directly that is being used against America, but Putin, strengthened with Chinese and Indian oil money, takes a more confrontational position. He's, got partial mobilization. He's not stepping back. He's threatening with nuclear weapons. Now, how would the Western countries, NATO and US, read it? They would read it as India siding with Russia and therefore encouraging it, exactly as we think Pakistan is encouraged by US actions. So when they sit down and talk, I think they need to clear the air. And therefore, at that particular point, maybe they step back. They are not going to cancel it. They've announced it. But they could scale it back. They could slow it down. They could link it to some other Pakistani behavior And of course, they're using the IMF also. There is the financial and the military thing. And weapons are normally used to keep the Pakistani military on board. They'll get a new army chief, so we believe, pretty soon. So it's very complicated. The Pakistan's internal political situation is complicated by Imran Khan having gone rogue and become a rebel rouser. And the street seems to be with him. And I think that is concerning Americans.
All right.
There is somebody like him wins an election and then he is completely in the Russian and the Chinese corner. They'll have no access to Afghanistan. And in fact, they would have lost one of their old allies. So it's a complicated situation. I'm sure they'll put on the table their concerns. We will put on the table. But I don't think, I think Jaishankar was making a case not to Americans when he spoke up. He was making a case to the Indian audience. Because, it is here that the government is embarrassed.
All right.
Because you see that Prime Minister was at Abe's funeral, where the 4 Quad countries were there. The Australian Prime Minister landed up with 3 other colleagues who had dealt with Abe. So the Quad countries were together in Tokyo at Abe's funeral. But we find to our west, we have a major difference of opinion with US.
Okay.
So how do you sustain this?
Yes.
Cooperation in one place and dissonance in the other?
All right. Many thanks to all 4 of our panelists here for joining us here on the discussion. So this is certainly an issue that we'll continue tracking, as that meeting is likely to take place shortly, and then there will be some press statements as well from both the sides in Washington, D.C. With that, we're taking a very quick break. We'll be back with a lot more. Stay with us.